On. We'll get started and do a quick round of introductions and then I'll give people a couple more seconds to pop in. I'm expecting a few more people. I'll start here. I'm Dan Demerit. I'm co-chair of the Good Neighbor Committee. Dan Merrill.
Dan Merrill, police chief. Chad Eddy, lifelong resident forum.
Margaret Sagita, I'm a grad student at UMaine and the GSG representative.
Shan, town manager.
Ross, local businessman.
Clayton, Webster Park resident.
Quinn. Town council.
Assistant town manager.
Brian, you wanna go?
Citizen.
I'm Lori Sudoku. And one of these student life at university and the liaison to town.
We got a packet coming around to Brian, so. And Casey's here with the Bangor Daily News, so it's a member of our audience. So that's the welcome. And the second item on the agenda is to talk through, and thank you all for being a part of this committee. The second item on our agenda is have the police chief and town manager present us disorderly event data reporting and discussion. And I'd like us to think about kind of any anecdotes we want to share. Our data is really important, but the anecdotes matter too. So to the extent that we have the data, and I appreciate Dan and Clint getting it together for us. So you want to walk us through it, Dan, or?
Yeah, so I would say, I sent an email off to Clint, and I assume you got it, Dan, the end of last week that essentially, I don't know if we're just extremely consistent. I think that the data would always show that since our last meeting in November, we had the exact same number of noise complaints reported to us. I think it was 31 before, and it was 31 this time to an overall number of 62. That's all noise complaints taken into the park, right? And then, as you can see on the disorderly events 25 spreadsheet, the last meeting was November 13th. Is that what we said?
Yeah.
I think there's only been four.
Looks like one incident, 11/23.
Oh yeah, I gotta scroll down then. Yeah, so there was one in November, and then we've had two in 26.
Yep.
So we've had three. Sorry, I'm getting Microsoft update things. 3 incidents since our November meeting, and only one of them has resulted in a fine.
Right.
So those numbers, if you look back, that's down. Number of ones that we've taken in from our officers from, the first half of the first meeting to the second meeting.
Can you talk us through what a noise complaint? Are these noise complaints of the variety of there's some sort of activity going on? These aren't necessarily like construction-based noise complaints. These are noise complaints that would be kind of come in through the 866-4000 or
these would be not 9 times out of 10 these disorderly event noise complaints that we get. So when I say a noise complaint, we've had 62 noise complaints since the ordinance went into effect. 9 times out of 10, they're nuisance noise complaints that could come in during the day, or they could come in at night. That are typically around loud activities. I mean, I know I was reading reports this weekend, and some people were outside in one of the big 3 complexes playing squash ball or whatever that handball thing is at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? So that comes in as a noise complaint to us, and has happened sometimes, and you'll see it in the disorderly event numbers. I think by the time we show up and a cruiser's driving to the parking lot, everybody disperses very quickly at 2 o'clock in the morning into their apartments. The squash ball is over and the incident resolves itself. They don't have to do anything. So I think some of that could be in these numbers also.
Yeah. So we have, I think, is it 19 since the life of what we're calling, I guess, these disorderly event incidences we have, I think I counted 19. 10 of them resulted, so 62 noise complaints. Leads to 19 events, investigatable events. And then of those 19, 10 were a warning and 9 had some sort of fine element to it. So that's kind of so
Sounds
we're
right.
more than half the time. So about 2/3 of the time, we don't have the police roll onto an event, get a call, respond. Only about 1/3 of those result in any kind of investigation, and then of that third, more than half are a warning, an opportunity for education without the enforcement.
So I would only add of the 9.
Yeah.
One of them's new, there's 4, one of them being very new. 4, but so the new one's kind of hard to count. Yeah, but 4 have not paid anything.
We collected about 5 of the 4.
5 of the 9
Okay,
have paid.
okay.
And one's just a couple weeks old.
And one's just a few weeks old.
Chad, did you have anything?
Yeah, Chief Farrell, what kind of feedback are you getting from the officers? They do have to take an issue of warning that, are they think it's a waste of their time, or they think it's, work?
I think, so I don't know that I've had any direct feedback from my officers that are going out dealing with it every night. I think that it probably feels the same to them. But I know, speaking anecdotally with Ed Lesky, whose name you'll see, when it says let me follow up, Ed Lesky is the community liaison that we have on staff. I know anecdotally, he's gotten mixed response from tenants. And that's to be expected to me sometimes, because I think to some degree word has gotten out that if you answer the door, he's gonna hand you a fine, and people don't answer the door. And I have no mechanism to compel people to answer the door. So that is why you'll also see in here sometimes the mailings will try and get people into, not get people, try and get the notice of violation to people in 2 different ways. We'll mail it to them if we can't make in contact or in-person contact with them. So I would say, and you can see it in the notes a little bit if you read some of them. I know there's some in there, especially one of the ones that we had the multiple violations on. He felt very confident that they've been home on more than one occasion when he's tried to go follow up on them, and they're not coming to the door. They're just not answering. So I would say anecdotally, it's working, and it's going well, and people not answering the door is something that we've dealt with for a while. So we're kind of used to it.
Okay, right?
I'm just curious, it may have been an email, but I don't remember. So the 19 disorderly properties this year, do we have a way how that compares to last year?
I don't have that right off the top of my head.
Well, not necessarily disorderly properties, right? In terms of a disorderly property by way of the ordinance is a specific designation that the police chief and the town manager make, is that right? That involve a,
Right.
Yeah, so I would say this process is new.
yeah,
So the categorization of somebody as a disorderly property and them getting notices is a little different under this new process than it was the old one. So I don't know if it can be even apples to
In
apples.
my memory, we utilized it 3 times last year. And that didn't start till late fall. We only utilized it 3 real times, but that was because it was kind of,
Multiple
yeah,
instance.
multiple instances, we frequent flyer.
There you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we just, but now we were moving towards a more utilized ordinance. And then these changes happen simultaneously, so.
So, I mean, one of the goals was to stop having neighbors engage in contacting the police, letting the police engage. It seems like that's probably happening at this point.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Dave, you,
I guess I would put it back to the neighbors and the people in Orono. I don't know how everybody's feeling about how the process is working. I can tell you how it's working on our end, and it's not cumbersome, and it's working for staff, and it hasn't been, a significant burden on us. But I think ultimately one of the goals of this committee and the ordinance in general was to try and be beneficial to the residents. And I mean, I look at it this way, if people aren't saying anything and people aren't bringing anything up, I say that we're doing the right things because people were.
Yeah,
So I say no news is good news. Yeah. If everyone's not talking to me frequently, then I think that we're doing
the
okay.
habitual sites are gone. Right.
Yeah.
But
You have repeat offenders, but they're not, last year was more about habituals.
And that's kind of one of the key pillars of when, we want to have we want to have people get into you think of it like since we're a college town, right? The enrollment funnel, right? We want to get these things into the engagement funnel, so we can move people along the process. And it starts with the neighbor calls to the extent that they have to call, and it's much better to have somebody call than to go out and confront challenging behavior at 11 o'clock. Well, I guess it's 11 apparently is early, but it's 2 o'clock, yeah. It's for me, it's very late. So that's helpful, I think.
certainly the chatter on the Webster side listserv is much. Would have seen lots and lots of conversations about, did anybody hear the party last night? That kind of, it's really, yeah, that's saying it first, yeah, it's really close to zero at this point. So in that measure, I think it's working.
The next 8 weeks will be
Yes.
a litmus test
And
as the weather
I
gets
see a-
better and
Weather
that's
gets
just.
better.
Yeah, no, yeah. Surprised the kids, the students that live at the end of my street. I half expected to see them on the roof yesterday. It was so nice, but they were outside playing football instead, but, and I do think I think a lot of this is the engagement and that we're making it a priority for our community. I mean, there's engagement with our partners at the university and people know that they are, that it's something the town is taking seriously, and I think that helps. So those conversations that happen that never involve the police department, that never involve the town manager's office, among, whether it's landlord to tenant or coach to player, or, all those kinds of conversations about, these are Orono has high expectations for people that live in its residential neighborhoods, I think are really beneficial. And it's gonna be, we're never gonna be able to track those with any kind of certainty or precision, but they make a big difference when it's personal relationships, encouraging people. You've got to understand this is something that Orono cares about. I think all right, anything anybody else wants to share on the impacts on neighborhoods, and then I'll ask about awareness, I guess. All right, I drove through the Webster neighborhood yesterday and I saw 3 8664,000 signs for noise or nuisance complaints, or concerns. And how are we doing on awareness? I guess let's talk first broadly about in the neighborhoods, and then maybe we'll talk about, and Catherine, I apologize that this was the time that worked for the vast majority of, well, everybody that's here, obviously. But we had some student representatives who weren't able to attend because of class schedules. So as a Black Bear dad, I support, as a committee member, all right. So how are we doing on awareness? If people know they should call, I think you would get a little something in the Orono Observer, front left, front page of the Orono Observer. But how are we doing?
I think it's working.
Yeah. Okay. Tough end, Chet, everybody knows.
Yeah, no issues down there.
Yeah. Okay.
Things are going well.
Okay. Well, we were at the bagel thing the other day, right? I didn't bring it up with anybody, but yeah, how do you think awareness is among students about what we're trying to do?
From the conversations that I've had with students, I don't think that they know except for the signs.
Yeah.
But I don't think they know to the extent or any of the ordinance itself. So I don't know, there can also be you might be able to speak to this, but our Center for Student Involvement is able to send an email blast to everyone's emails. And so Student Life, so I don't know if I know students don't read their emails often, but that way they would have access to the information that the ordinance might help. Or if there was a flyer, anything that I could send to the graduate student government, and then they can send that to all the grad students. Just because they see all the signs. I've talked to my student workers, they know about the call number and everything. It's just more information about what the ordinance is to students. And there might have been an email already sent last semester before, but yeah.
Who's the undergrad rep?
We have Joseph Elliott, we have Peter, Berner.
Yeah.
He's the Greek appointment, and Griefi, Gebel is was our initial student He's been with us from the start, so. And we had, okay. All right, well, we're gonna come back to awareness opportunities towards the back end of this, so. We're gonna move on to number 3. And I know we only scheduled an hour, so, item number 4 was. For background, this came together quickly last summer, right? For those of us on the committee, we were here every Monday at, I think it was 10 a.m. for 6 or 7 weeks until we got this thing hammered out. We had one student participant. And it was in response to, we had the assault last spring, which really was a bad way to end kind of the. We're in a funny place, right? We have calendar years, we have fiscal years, we have academic calendars, so it's, a lot of different, but, so we had a lot of urgency to act last summer, and we did. And we had something new in place for the start of the new academic year. But we also, like, citizenship doesn't take summers off, but we didn't get the kind of engagement we could have had with student participants, given the schedule and how we started. We did make people aware that we were having meetings, things like that, but so. As part of our discussion, we agreed when we moved this forward to bring some student representatives in. We got some key feedback from Clint, and Andrea Hardison went to a student government meeting, the undergraduate student government meeting. To have conversations. We got a memo back from the university. And just like I mentioned before, those behind the scenes, person-to-person connections and conversations that are happening that kind of help make this work. Without anybody having to call 866-4000. To that same level, I really believe that buy-in is a key component to those conversations in terms of this being something that we did as a community involving all of our stakeholders. So following up on our November conversation, we agreed that I would work with the student participants to have a meeting to talk about potential improvements. There are elements of this thing that we know we're never going to collect. The doubling of the doubling gets to $1 million after like 11 or 12 events. We know we're never going to collect $1 million from anybody. So there's obviously some opportunities for some changes. So we met, and you have in front of you a memo that student participants and I worked on together that suggest potential changes to the ordinance that we consider. And the schedule is a little faster than but I wanted to try and have something that we could be talking about this spring before a lot of our residents kind of leave town for the summer. So I don't know, Catherine and I were part of it, and Peter and Joseph and Gracie were there. So I'm happy to walk through it. I don't know, Catherine, if you want to present it, but whatever. Again, I apologize. I have to speak for all the students, but we had consensus that the fines were confusing and expensive. The doubling of the doubling is hard to follow. So we talked about potentially coming back with a clear and consistent $300 fine for each violation. We talked about setting an annual limit of $1,200. We talked about reward improvement with a rebate. So if there is a first fine, and someone goes the year without another fine, there's a rebate. And then there's one minor technical clarity change, striking unnecessary from the disorderly activity noise definition. Those were the 4 pieces. Really, these conversations really focused on the residents, not the property owner. So I think there's room for us to consider. And I think some of what really, for some of us, there's concern about the persistently problematic property. Making sure those people who own those properties, whether it's a homeowner or landlord, pays attention to problem behavior. So there is 2 sides to this conversation, but I wanted to open it up and see what people want. If other people have other ideas about ways to improve the ordinance. I mean, it's only been in effect since August, so it hasn't been a lot of time, admittedly. So, sure.
So that's what warnings were given, right? Yep. So in those cases, the penalties didn't matter. I'm curious what if you can give any kind of characterization of when a fine was actually issued, what the circumstances, what time it was, how loud it was, how many people there were, what's actually triggering a fine?
So
We're all after 10 o'clock, I can tell you that.
yeah,
So the doubling for after 10 was moot.
right.
Yeah,
It's after 10. So that's why that was one of the, him and I completely agreed that we've got to get rid of the doubling after 10 component. It's automatically doubled because they're always after 10.
yeah.
And if they're not after 10, well, okay, it's the same $300. It's just as annoying before 10 as it is after, so we're the $300.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we kind of, sorry to put a very pragmatic layperson approach, but that's kind of what dawned on us when we sat and had our meetings. I'm like, this is getting kind of simple. So that was one. As far as the others, I mean, I got involved. I had a few phone calls, messages, wish they could get out of it kind of requests, and it wasn't me, it was my guests. Well, welcome to being an adult. That's the way it works. And it was, you know, from my perspective, that's how I saw a lot of it. And I will say right now, my biggest takeaway and part of this, and I shared with Dan, we've got 5 that paid, 4 that haven't. And I want to refund the ones that have paid because they have not had repeat occurrences. And the ones that haven't paid, I'm fully prepared to take the small claims court and make them pay. Because and I think that's when you look at this, there's paid within 60 days kind of component, and then don't have another violation. You're being a good steward or citizen of our community by following the rules. Ones that are paying late or never paying, never gonna refund you. Pay the fine. You knew you could. Show us you're an adult. You understand you messed up. And that's kind of the way I want to do it. And that's something that at some point the council's gonna see anyways, because I would like to do that for this year without the ordinance saying it. We gotta go over a few of these, but I think that's the one we should approach. But there might be one of the 4 that may be potentially waivable. I gotta sit and meet with Dan. We gotta kind of get into this a little bit more fine tune. But yeah, that's kind of how I was seeing it. That, you know, they were good, they paid it. They were always responsive to Officer Lesky. You know, the other ones aren't being responsive. One occasion, I know off the top of my head, group.
Okay.
That's just not waivable in my mindset, you know.
I mean, I totally support the refund program. I think this is not meant to be deeply punitive. It's meant to be changing behavior, and if behavior changes, right? After 10 o'clock, I think we all had this kind of nagging sense that 10 o'clock on a Friday night was probably too early, right? There may be another time, and we kept it because that's what the noise ordinance says, but there may be another time like midnight or 1 a.m. that is still reasonable. I'm just curious, how many people were there? How loud / drunk were the people? Was this 5 people having a beer around a sofa, or was this 30 people outside with a?
No, I would say, so one of the things that we've done too, and I think that we might have talked about it at the first meeting that we had. I can't speak to a single party that I've heard about that's happened this school year that's been like, that was hundreds and hundreds of persons party, right? That would have been like an automatic disorderly too. So I think a lot of to what Clint was saying, we were getting a lot of $600 fines, not because we were finding a ton of really large parties, but because they were automatically after 10 o'clock.
Yep.
So anecdotally, I think that for just seeing parties that are, I would consider a normal size, you know, 20, 30 people, you know, typically less than 50 people. It's late at night. Like I said, I was reading a couple reports this morning that were somebody left the TV on at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it keeps their neighbor up, or, you know, people, it is getting warmer, so there are going to be more people outside playing outdoor activities until all hours of the night. And sometimes they just need to be told it's too late.
Yeah, one of the bigger ones was the very beginning of the school year. And it was an inadvertent party. They were having friends and it grew out of their control.
Yeah.
And actually asked for police help at the last visit, so, but we did find them and they did pay. The other one, it was more probably late fall, maybe sometime around homecoming or Halloween, right in that time frame. And you know, that was one of the ones, well, you know, my guests were out of control. I was right, they were. And they did something kind of on the foolish side, which we talked about and said, yeah, those guests. That's why you gotta own your guests. They shouldn't have done what they were doing, but none of them were big numbers. I think 40 or 50 was the biggest number I think they talked
Yeah,
about.
haven't been massive ones that we've been seeing.
So with the party, well, with the spring semester coming, or, you know, the best is yet to come, right? The warm weather coming, right? I would assume you're waiting until the end of the year and to offer rebates and things like that.
Yes, yeah, but before
with
they leave
that-
too, probably before they get out of
Right,
town.
before they leave, but, I also wonder if it wouldn't hurt for the people who had fines to offer, like, let them know that there's a possible incentive. Because if they had parties that grew legs last fall, then maybe they will in the spring too, because spring fever is about to hit. So I almost wonder if you give them an incentive, you know, a carrot to say, hey, good job, and because of your good job, if we continue with this by May 1st, then whatever, I don't know. just
Give
a
us an
thought.
address in case you happen to be moving after May 1, so we know where to, yeah, that's not a bad idea. I like that.
Right, I mean, just as a little carrot.
Can we show up at graduation and hand little checks out? Here's your $300, here's your $600 back. Here's your-
Yeah, we made you simple.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a 1 year, it's 1 year. So we told them that if you're good for a year, so if you want to plan one big rager a year, you get in trouble once every year. That's maybe, you know, you could do it. I mean, but that's kind of, that's the old language, 365 days was what the old language said.
I'm not sure I'm really comfortable with that kind of, I mean, I get like people just coming to the door, but you know, you gotta get your.
Sentiment?
Collect $10 from, you know, collect $5 from all 60 people there, so you have your $300.
But the other hard, it was a lot of times the roommates change here, so maybe it's 1 or 2 common, but if there's 4 people there, 2 or 2 are, who's throwing the, and that was one of the
I was
ones,
saying, no,
who's the party thrower?
Yeah, we had that, we had one instance too, remember, where it was a different apartment, right? We tested the
Yeah.
ordinance on 2 different apartments at one address. And I think that they had gotten rid of the first set of tenants, and then the second set of tenants had one, we're like, well, it's a different group of people.
Yeah.
We're going to, right, there was one that was early on in the fall, and then they didn't re-let for the spring. We went back, I think, in the spring, and it was a different group of people. And we're like, well, I think I had if I remember correctly, I had a meeting with the manager and just said, hey, we're not considering this a second violation for you because it is a new group of people. You still need to break in this new group of people as well and let them know. If I remember correctly.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That's Jody.
I think these proposals are definitely worth considering, especially the rebate. I like rewarding good behavior instead of rewarding bad behavior. Makes me crazy. I do think I would like us to continue to separate tenants as students and landlords. I just think those are 2 different conversations in terms of the rebate or the fine structure and potential rebate because of the problematic houses or
Yeah.
properties we've had over time. I do have a question, because I don't know how this is going to work, because we've been dealing with this by address, right? Not by name. And I don't know that we can answer this question now, but it occurs to me reading this, may probably belatedly, that there are problem addresses. There are also problem individuals that move addresses. So, you know, we might have some of these folks who haven't paid a fine or maybe are going to fight it tooth and nail that show up next year in another property. Do they get to start from scratch? Like, how do we deal with problem people?
I think that the rebates were chief and manager recommended. So we're gonna leave some subjectivity to it, but we didn't want to, it's not an automatic,
Yep,
oh, you didn't have one, you're getting your money back.
Yep.
No, and that's gonna give some discretion. I mean, the police department, they know the names, they know the addresses. They treat them correctly based upon the information they know. I don't think you could put it in ordinance to say that, so I don't know how you'd word it. I think you're getting into chasing something really difficult to say.
Right.
And I mean, we're hearing great feedback. I mean, 1 or 2 a couple problem addresses. Definitely addressing the address. They're really getting into why this address is complete, always comes up under different tenants as a problem. So they've really started working hard. As far as the people, I think there's only 2 names that have come up on a couple occasions. Between,
Yeah.
and we're keeping that anonymous, and the police department's been telling me how they're handling it, and I thought it's been excellent. But that's,
I just
would
don't know
argue,
if
I
there
think-
was any mechanism for that.
Well, I think I would say that the tolerance that I think Clint has spoken about with this ordinance or the ability to leave it somewhat open, that if I saw the same group of three people constantly coming up within a year, I think that we could say that you're not eligible for a rebate because you're not being a good neighbor, right? Like, it is as much about the property, single apartment, as it is the people. So I think that if you get kicked out of Chad sitting on my right, you get kicked out of Chad's apartment, you go rent from Dennis. And then in 6 months, you have a party at Dennis's place. I don't know that you get the rebate back from the first violation. I think that that could follow you as a singular person. We haven't vetted it, but I think that I think it's reasonable to say it could follow you.
Does it get reset to 0 each year?
after a full year without a violation, you're back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes. Now,
Assuming we don't.
again, are we gonna, the same theory though, same person, same address, back-to-back years? And over a year in between, I think you've already made your decision, we're not doing the rebate game with you.
Well,
And I don't think we have to put
rebate
that-
aside, I'm just wondering about in terms of fines and caps and so forth, how does it work?
Yeah, the
I'm
fines
good
and
with the
caps is
rebate.
it's
You
annual,
know,
it would be annual.
okay, all right, I just wanted a clarification.
But there's awareness, so you know if someone's been, been a problem, you've been chasing them, they've been having to chase them around town, and then a new year starts. There's a lot of discretion in these warnings, and I think that you probably be aware that this is someone who hadn't really learned from last year, so there's probably less latitude or less grace or,
And we did, we
Yeah.
noticed, I mean, academic year is somewhat of a reset with the summer hitting, but that isn't a hard reset. Meaning if you got written up in December, we dealt with this, we notified them. They're on hook till December, one of the other ones was in April. We notified them and said, you're hooked till this April this year.
Yeah.
So be very, very careful. And there were some comments, well, we're new tenants. You've been given notice.
So the
This
clock
address-
starts from the notice, not.
Yeah, from
Got
that
it.
violation. Yeah,
It
from
was
that
true,
violation.
okay.
Yeah, we've been dealing with that.
To Jody's point, the rebates are not included for landlords.
No rebate for landlord, because they're not getting fined till the second offense anyway. So we feel that they're on notice with the first one not getting it, and I wouldn't have recommended a repeat on.
can we, so as we go in full time, this is, I'm happy to meet every Monday if you want, but can we, number 3, the reward improvement with the rebate, is there consensus at this table to bring this forward as an improvement for the council's consideration? For the residents? Consensus, everybody good, there's nods, let the record show. All right, and then we'll work on that. I do think there probably ought to be, discretion of the manager and the police chief, something in the ordinance that says, you were gonna do it anyway without, which, I like it when you do stuff like that anyway, but if you're gonna do it.
Always get me in trouble if you don't like it.
Yeah, you tell us stuff, and there's no question that we know what you're doing, so, which is the important part, but, yeah, I think the ordinance, there should be a discretion change. Let's talk about, number 4 seems pretty easy. Anybody have any concerns with striking unnecessary from the disorderly activities and the noise definition? Seems kind of like an easy one, everyone okay with that one? All right, we already got 2, we're already halfway there. How about on the resident front? I'm leaving the last one for the hardest one for last, I think. On the resident front, is a $1,200 annual limit seem to make sense to people for the resident? Remember the blue one, yeah, no. So, we don't have anybody who's had, well, there's been one incident where someone, yeah, we're gonna talk about the doubling last, I suppose, but, does anyone think you need more than $1,200 in place as a deterrent for residents?
No.
$1,200 is a lot to even a graduate student.
Well,
Congratulations on your new contract.
We have really limited data, but it doesn't seem like we did
Yeah.
this. Very small.
And you can
It's 1,200 a single fine.
well, we're gonna get to the doubling and the doubling and doubling in a minute, so.
So in other words, it's 1,200 total out of max.
Yeah.
It's capped at 1,200. Do that.
Yeah,
Could it be something like 1,200 or two separate offenses? Because if you could get to 1,200 in one offense,
well, maybe we gotta do
then
the,
that, you didn't learn anything from that.
maybe we gotta do the doubling and the doubling first, then that'll clear the deck. So the first suggestion was, again, I think we get to 10 p.m. quiet hours, because that seems like an awful lot. You know, it was gonna be 9 p.m., but then my wife is like, sometimes I have, you know, my knitting group over here until after 9 o'clock. All right, let's do 10, that's it. And then just the power of my personality drove that through while people had better. I did give up the 911 thing, as you'll recall. It was very gracious.
It's working.
Yeah, it's working. Yeah, it is. That was my favorite line that, you know, I don't get to write all the time. So the clear and consistent $300 fine for each violation. That would mean for the resident, there would be no, we're talking resident, we should talk, property owner after this. It seems that we want to tweak there, but are we comfortable with the idea that a $300 fine for when there's a violation issued, right? And then whether the fine is issued or not involves a conversation with the town manager and the police chief. That's the process. But are we comfortable with a $300 rap on the knuckles for each of, that would mean 4 potential fines. All the while remembering, if you get the 4 fines, your landlord, I try not to make eye contact with Dennis when I'm having these conversations, but knowing that Dennis is a fabulous landlord, he's attentive, but the fines are stacking up on the landlord, which I think is a big part of the problem we want to address, is that property owners weren't being responsive to the fact that their property was a problem for their neighbors. Tenants are gonna come and go, but if the landlord is willing to, live Hampton, or Portland, or wherever they're gonna live, and not address and welcome year after year, kind of a challenging mix of people, so.
I feel like there's circumstances where the tenants need to have more skin in the game than $300. I mean, let's be honest, some of these parties, $300 is being spent on the alcohol. Right?
Yeah.
So it sounds like the 10 o'clock is not working. It either needs to change to 1 a.m. or something, or the time doubling needs to go away. But the disorderly too, where there's 50 people, I'm not sure $300 is adequate.
Okay.
And likewise, second offense, I'm not sure $300 is adequate. So I guess mostly I would move in the direction of striking the 10 o'clock doubling.
Yeah.
I think the disorderly too, and the second offense doublings are reasonable. And I think $300 is a healthy chunk of change, especially graduate student, graduate student, but on the other hand, it's, if you're having a party with 60 people, or if.
The nightclub style event that I kind of talk about.
Or if you're repeating things over and over again,
Yeah.
I think 600 is not way out of whack for those 2 cases.
Yeah.
The 10 o'clock is clearly not working, but
What time is the noise ordinance for the town? Like, is it 10 o'clock? Are we following that? Is that what 10 o'clock
State
is?
law doesn't.
Sorry?
State law is 9 o'clock now. Now, there's some weirdness around the new state law, but we've been focusing on 10.
And our noise ordinance is more geared towards if someone's doing construction, stuff like that.
Concerts. I think the
Yeah.
concerts all had to be over by 10 or.
Yeah, Bangor's struggling with the same issue as well.
Right.
There's some new rules around this, and the state got kind of interesting about it, so I don't know where we're at for sure, but in relation to us, 10 o'clock, and there's a quiet hour requirement in Maine now, that everything after a certain hour is supposed to be getting quiet. And how you enforce that, no idea. So this was all happening last summer, the law in place, just after we did this. I don't want to get into it.
Yeah.
It's just not.
I think there's a little bit of a marketing question, though, too, of like, if we're going to send out a 1-pager or an email, and posters in places where folks are gonna be able to see them, that
we have that balance between like everything's $300, which would be really clean and concise on a poster versus like, I agree. I think sometimes $300 might just be a price of admission. And but the doubling, removing those things.
Yeah.
In order to make it really clean to community.
Are we still gonna double a second offense?
Well, that's what we're talking about right now.
I guess if I would put it, first offense 300, second 6, third 6, 1,500 a year maximum. Allows you to have 3 violations and there's your 1,500 maximum. It doesn't clean it up from there. There's gonna be other problems we got to deal with. I think as you look at this, I think the D2 is automatically double because it's over the number of people. And that should be 6, 12, and 12. That leaves you to a 1,500 and 3,000 annual maximum. Both I think are reasonable, especially when you look at on the level of order of magnitude, we deal with more of the ones, but when the 2s happen, they're hard. There's a lot of strain on staff, time, resources, without question. So that's why I think if you had, I think that 1,200 max on a disorderly 2 is too low.
So that way, that gives us room for, and if we set aside, I think that 10 o'clock is in the university residence hall rules too, in terms of, as I recall, when we were looking at things to tie it back to other things, and not just arbitrary, yeah, the mayor's already asleep at that time, which is admittedly not the right way to write laws. But if we did, if we conceptually, if the intent, if our intent is, okay, the people that have the little, things get a little out of hand and we don't, but it's 10 or 12 people outside around a fire and they're just, it could be a warning, but okay, most will be 300. But we definitely want to have more teeth around the nightclub style event, whether it was intended or not. Those things are broadly dangerous to a neighborhood as well. I mean, those are the events that led to assaults, because there's
Assaults and people walking away from parties who are drunk who end up dying on the way home, right?
Yeah.
We haven't had it in Orono, but knock on wood, but drunken driving scenarios, right?
Yeah.
Those parties literally can be lethal, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, it seems to me that we've got multiple levers we can pull here. If we want to cap at a certain amount, we could also say something like, rebates are capped at 300. And if you have a property and you escalate from a $300 to at some point you have a 600, you're no longer eligible for any kind of rebate from the town.
right.
So, just some other incentives to not let things get out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been using discretion on the disorderly too. I mean, the number's 25, I believe, in ordinance.
20.
20?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when the officer and the chief and I, when we review these, what was the number? And we've been looking at it and, it's not, we hit 21, double.
Yeah.
Just did,
Yeah. So I
wasn't working.
I think not most of them, all of them.
Yeah, because it would have doubled it, because it was after 10 and at over 20. So we would have been at a $1,200 fine. I said, no, we're not doing this. So and again, you need to know that we did not, there were some disorderly 2s we could have put out there that we didn't. It just didn't make sense. And that number 20, and this is the hard part. You got a 1-bedroom studio, you got 20 people in it. That's where I kind of said, I go, well, the officer's really gonna try to, you got a 5-bedroom and you got 21 people in it. That's 3-4 people to a room in a huge house. Is that really off? But again, we didn't want to put big numbers on these like 50 or 100. So we've just been using our discretion when the fines come in, that we have the authority to determine if it was a disorderly 2. That's a tough spot, but full disclosure.
So Clint, why were you talking about annual caps? I understood this is just gonna be a cap on the amount that it could. But if a tenant gets up to their 3rd offense, are they really capped and they don't have to pay after that? I would think more that there was a cap on how high the fine could go, right? So it can't double up to $1 million, but they're really there on a 4th or a 5th offense. We should be charging the tenant as well as the landlord. So
1,200 would be the max per offense.
No, well, yeah, that's a doubling of doubling, and that's kind of a.
But that, if you did this on the disorderly 2, the 3rd offense is 1,200, 4th would be 12, 5th would be 12.
Mhm.
Yes, that's $6,000 total, but you did have 5 events.
It's meant to deter. I mean, if it's not a big enough number,
You
it's.
tell me, I mean, this is where you guys get to advise us. I think you're on the right track for what the chief and I are talking about.
It seems like these are gonna be edge cases. Based on the data, so. It's with doubling on the. Second defense, is that correct?
What was your question?
I didn't have, I hadn't worked my way around the question, and I was kind of gonna talk until.
Yeah. Thoughts? Yeah.
That we had that edge case. Or that when we're talking about multiple. Like third, fourth, fifth, sixth events, that these are unlikely to escalate that far. Which to my mind makes sense that we wouldn't necessarily need to have a year's cap on fees. Because it is an edge case, and if we do get into that territory, like something weird's going on. The pressure on, I guess, on one situation. I would imagine that the police department, if someone is having, you know, third, fourth, fifth events that are rising to this level of a disorderly 2, that's not going to be the only thing. This is not going to be the only lever the police departments would have to intervene in situations.
Well, there's the just declaration of disorderly property as well, and mediation process that the landlord has to go through at that point. And that feels like that's where you're starting to talk about evictions, or what are your plans to get this addressed? And the landlord's gonna have to go through that process. So that's part of it as well.
Yeah, so which I guess is to say, I feel kind of comfortable with that, not necessarily having a limit, but having a limit on the per party.
Doubling with a,
Yeah, double. Yeah, that it doubles for 600 for potentially 1,200. Have the opportunity for 600. Yes.
And at what point is it not just money and property, ability to renew your rental license? Is there a point where it comes in where people are getting citations?
That's what I kind of mean about that discretion.
Yeah.
At a property where those things are happening, the police department probably has more levers to pull than just this ordinance.
I mean,
Just to say, people don't usually just break one rule at a time.
that's where
I've
you
heard of that.
it's a crime to host underage drinking and stuff like, so those are opportunities there if you run into those kinds of things, but.
I don't know, I mean, from my perspective, I don't know that a flat fine of the same amount. We can do whatever the committee wishes, but I don't disagree that I think Brian may not be. If you say it's $300 every time, you're not really escalating at all. I don't know if you do 369, have the cap at 12 or something like that, and then it's just, I think the doubling gets weird math wise. So I don't know if you just keep stacking them and you make them 369, something like that, and you cap at 12 for the 4th violation. Or something to that effect, but I don't know. You're not dissuading anybody to continue to have problems if they have $100.
And yeah,
It's the same violation the first time as it is the second time. Well, you didn't get the hint the first time, so the second time is gonna be the same number. Maybe they just have a tolerance to that number. But that's just my 2 cents too.
and I think about. I agree, I think that. And I think about it in terms of. For the students who, we had the conversations with, it was. Kind of a worst case scenario, thinking a little bit in terms of how much it's gonna get up to, but at the same time. The behavior doesn't change, then that's the problem, people need to pay attention to the problem behavior, keep coming back to that, so maybe the win is, reward with a rebate. Maybe the win is make sure, okay, $300 fine seems like, make sure it's not a $600 fine if you're just. A group of 8 or 10 people who, had a learning opportunity, so let's make that, and it happened to be after 10 o'clock at night. And then keep in place the escalating enforcement to the extent that there are places, if you're gonna keep being a problem, then you're gonna just gotta be.
And maybe the point that the escalation doesn't have to be doubling, right? It could be 36912 instead of 3612.
Yeah.
Because 12 starts to be serious money for anybody, so
Yeah.
maybe 36912, and if it's a disorderly two, add $400 or $300.
I feel like we ought to have a whiteboard, you just kind of have it.
Got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
So it would be, just to talk it through, it would be. The 10 o'clock piece would go away. And it would be, so $300 any time of day. Okay, and then. I still want to be able to communicate that after 10 o'clock, it's time to turn it down and take it inside, and you're less likely to get the call. If you're, after 10 o'clock, your neighbors are more likely to call and.
It'll point to the noise ordinance, right?
Yeah. But that's, so if it's after. But that'll take the quiet hour. I think Orono can still. Message that the quiet hours start at 10, and that's the time we ask people to take it inside, turn it down.
Heightened scrutiny. got it.
Heightened scrutiny type of thing. Okay, the fine doesn't necessarily change, but then it's 300 for the disorderly one, regardless of time of day. And then keep in place the 600 for disorderly two, because that's a order of magnitude bigger event, right? That is. What do
So
you
we
want
just
people?
make the D2 twice as much, period, so it would be 6, 12, 18, 24.
Well,
I mean, you could either make the D2 a double, or you can make it the D2 an increment, right? Add $300 if it's a D2.
I don't think it's likely you're ever gonna get to a fourth offense anywhere.
I don't think so either.
Still,
I mean, we have one case that got to 2, right?
Yeah.
So getting to 3 or 4 is.
I think if we go to this thing, we're never gonna get to 4, and 4 is the number we're gonna stay at forever. Multiple repeat offenses. I think we're getting to 4. I mean, with the remediation plans in the language, the plan's going to take care of this. And again, I wanna make sure, so far, we've seen no evictions as a result of this, right? Seen some warnings. There might have been, no, there was one unrelated eviction to the disorder. Unrelated. Yeah. But that's, so that's, and we didn't want to be, at least if I caught you right the last time we did this. We weren't here to try to get kids evicted. This was not the intent, anybody evicted. This was the intent, just to stop the habit. It's up to the landlord to determine the best methods are.
So to simplify it. It could be 300 for the first events. Anytime, and that's rebatable, right? You can get a rebate on that. And then D2s are 600 every time.
Yeah, 6, 12, 18, 24.
You wanna do, is that,
I would hate to see a D2 get a second offense, $600 fine.
so if they've had two nightclub style events,
Yep.
that's how I think of it as big. Is 20 the right number for that still? Feels like it's gotta be some number.
For sure. It's gonna be at least 1,200 for the second offense.
Right, but I mean, it's 20 people, I mean, that's kind of the trigger, right? 20 people or more? Is that the right number?
There's a list.
It doesn't sound like it has been based on.
We've not been black and white to the 20 person rule.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but you guys aren't going and doing head counts. Like,
No, but you can,
And still I said,
you can look at this room and you can see what's 20,
Sure.
you can look and see what's 100. Right, we kind of use that eyeball test is.
What if it was 10 per bedroom? We know what they're licensed at, 10 per bedroom. 4 bedroom is 40.
no, yeah, let's not.
We'll look it up.
Okay.
The officer looked it up. It's gonna be me.
No, I hope I'm not looking in the bedrooms when I'm standing. It's a.
No, we're gonna look at the rental registration. We know the address. We know.
Give me the
Oh,
guess.
I see what you're saying. How many?
I'm saying, we use the, when we go there, we use what I would call like the threshold approach, right? Like, they open the door and if I see people all shoulder to shoulder and it's all sweaty and weird and awkward in there, that's more than 20 people, right? If it's, 3 people sitting on the couch there and I see 2 in the kitchen making dinner, that's different, right? We use
All right,
the eyeball test. We're cops, we can tell the eyeball.
The disorderly too was that the officer notes it being over 25
Yes.
and the chief and the manager determine if it should be. I think that's where there's gotta be a second approval phase, because it comes to this chief Clint, we had a 5-bedroom house, they had 25 people there. But it was just a nice birthday party. It was loud and the neighbor didn't like it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, we gotta back this down. It's not a different disorderly too. So maybe 25 is the number. but it's a two-step process. The officer has to know more than 25. The chief and I determine it does rise. Cause I think that's where you're missing that piece.
Well, and are we gonna change the ordinance to account for that, or are we gonna just?
I
Yeah.
argue too, how much of the ordinance do we wanna change all at once? Cause it's gonna really start to throw some mixed messages out to people.
Yeah,
Right? You start changing the number, you start changing ones and twos.
that's what I think.
I think we should incrementally start looking at tweaking the ordinance as opposed to making wholesale changes less than 9 months.
So leave it
into
at
the
20 and you
ordinance.
know how we're handling it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So leave it at 20.
Yep.
My opinion.
So we do the $300 the first offense. That's a clear change, and it's it reflects what we've heard from the data and what in the conversations we had with our student participants. We have the rebate, which reflects, you know, that this is an education initiative more so than anything else. And if someone has, someone demonstrates that they've heard and come to understand what our expectations are for Orono's residential neighborhoods, that's a win. That's a positive step in the right direction. And then the third piece is if we have a cap or not. And right now, the order is doublings of doublings. So I think we could make, it would be more, I think it would be more clear if it was just 600 in effect, like, for the second for any disorderly two activity. Does that make sense to people? And always
It is
600?
right now.
What's
That's
that?
what it is right now too, which is good.
So no more doubling. I like that.
Does that make-
I mean, escalation, but not doubling, right?
Escalation, but no doubling.
Yeah.
And then,
What do you mean by escalation?
uh,
What do you mean by escalation?
369.
if it's a second offense, you're paying more than the first offense.
Yeah,
If it's a third offense, you're paying more than the second offense. I'm kind of fine with stopping at 3, because like you say, we're not.
Yeah, 3 or 4. You tell us which one it stops at. Either one's good, but I agree with
and
that.
offenses?
3 or 4 offenses, yes.
Well, I don't think it stops at any offense. I mean, if you get,
escalation stops.
The escalation stops at so many.
oh, the third offense. So the
Third or
most,
4th.
so if you're the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh offense, you're
Yep.
$1,200. So it's $300 for. Talking about the D1s, the D2s, right?
Yeah,
So the
3,
six,
6, 9.
6, 12, and then you want to just stop at 12?
Glad you said 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 12. Which way do you want it?
You're just talking about twos, you're talking about ones.
Yeah, we're talking about different Ds.
We're talking about two different event styles. 3, 6, 9, 12 for the D ones is what we're talking about. With a cap at 12 on a fourth violation. If you get 5, 6, 7, 8 violations, it's still $1,200.
So your eighth violation is $1,200,
It's all $1,200
Over and
now.
over.
and you know, you're not getting any creative that.
Yep.
And a D2 is 6, 12, 18, 24. Capped at 24 repeatedly until you
That's what I mean.
get fined out.
I like it.
Yeah.
Is what we've talked about. That's the escalator that he's talking about. It's consistent, it's not doublings. And $600, 300 and 600 is the base fines that we had in the ordinance when we started.
So we're staying
We're
the same.
really not changing the ordinance dramatically.
Mhm.
We're just making little nuance changes. I recommend not making wholesale changes because it's gonna confuse me too, if I'm being completely honest. And my staff that has to enforce this.
But I just,
We're on to
staff
it,
not
it
dealing
goes
with this. Just the officer writing it up. You and I end up doing
I'm a staff person last time I checked.
that. Talk about that
We'll
after.
get it.
So not to throw the wrinkle in, but what happens if it's a D1 the first time and a D2 the second time, or a D2 the first time and a D1 the second time?
Oh, boy.
This is where I think it's easier to just have the D2 be a increment, right? Add $300, add $500 to whatever the step scale is.
I mean, I had 3, 6, 9, 12, I had 6, 12, 18, 24.
So I'd go his route. You could add $300, $400 for every D2. The D2. So it's the
first
third
time's
offense,
300.
first time D2. It's the third offense plus 300.
From a marketing perspective, again, if we're trying to communicate this to people that might be deciding what to do, I think that makes a lot of sense to just add in that it's a modifier, not a.
So parties over 25 is an extra, how much?
Another 300.
300 is what we have right now, that works for me.
So
That way, if you do 2 D1s and then you do a D2, it's clear. If you do a D2 and then 2 D1s, it's clear, right?
Like it.
So you escalate every time you have a disorderly event. That's a fine.
Yep.
And then if it's a D2, you add $300 on top of it.
You still go 3, 6, 9, 12.
And then if it's,
If you mix in another one, you get an extra $300.
okay,
Yep.
If you mix in a D2 with a D1, you get an extra
So you
300.
could go, you could in theory go 3, 9, 9, 12.
don't Clint, it's doing me.
We got this. You're gonna have 300 extra
Alright,
to your
At
event.
11 AM, we got that. So that'll be, and that, I'm gonna ask
I'll give you a spreadsheet on it.
We'll write it.
Yeah, I get it, but we're gonna have to, so we have a couple more minutes just to kind of put a bow on this. What do you think, Kathy? Are you prepared to speak for 11,000 university students?
Maybe. I think it'd be good to get Joseph's opinion, for like any decision is made, because he was very like set on this doubling and the financial aspect of it all, so I don't know what his opinion would be.
Okay,
But I think that that sounds fine, the having it at 12 and then 24, or however it ends up with the 300. And then also marketing to students, saying like a D2 is just an additional 300 is like way easier for them to understand.
yeah,
But yeah, I definitely would be interested in Joseph's opinion.
okay.
Yeah.
And we'll reach out to the students reps who couldn't be with us today with a link to the video and a follow-up conversation. There are other pieces that, so for the, like, and I download these videos and it's very helpful to have it. So we're gonna go with, we go over the rebate, definitely first time offense, go a year, you're gonna get your money back. We're gonna make the technical and clarity change. And then we're looking at not having an annual limit at this, based on this discussion, because we need to be able to escalate and people who consistently have problem behavior. And we're gonna talk to Joseph about it, but that's kind of where we are with that piece. And then we're gonna get rid of the quiet hour piece, so that first disorderly one, any time of day, is $300. But just with but we'll communicate the understanding that it's less deference, is that the term you used, or there's less, after 10 o'clock, you know, it's people are more apt to pick up the phone and call on you if you don't turn it down and take it inside. Does that make sense? So that's kind of a consensus. We feel like that's kind of a consensus. I'll talk with Joseph before and if we bring it to council that way and student reps have concerns about it, I'll bring it in and say, we had this this was the consensus of the committee, but we brought it back. We had these concerns, but it doesn't reflect everybody, if that's how it ends up shaking out. The other piece, topics for the spring, quickly before we go. Continuing engagement education, we need to make sure that we're continuing that work.
Try to get it started.
Yeah. Town's gonna continue to prioritize warnings when it's appropriate. That feels like that's good. What about in the university zone? What are we doing in terms of, is there any, if it's at a fraternity house or, one of those, we don't do it, right? So, yep.
Easy answer.
With the exception of the houses that are not on university property.
Right.
Correct. They
Can I-
call for assistance.
Can I ask a related question about just the data we have so far, because it's not captured in there? When we're looking at this list of 19 investigations this school year, what's the breakdown in terms of large housing complexes, single family homes in residential neighborhoods, purpose-built apartments that are outside of like our big three? Like, because I think that's kind of
There's
relevant.
more warnings in the big three because they're self-policing it better and we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And we're watching out for the habitual, it would not be uncommon for two neighbors to all of a sudden be feuding and calling each other
Yeah, yeah.
nonstop. That being said, if the feud gets out of hand, we are gonna fine just because enough's enough. And that's because we gotta get it in the landlord's hand. But yeah, the big three, if you will, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah.
because there's a few big complexes. It's more on the morning side because the owners are doing more to stop it.
I think typically you'll see the data would support the ones that we have found have been at neighborhood housing residences, knowing that it's a different living environment than what Clint talked about at the big three.
Because I'm curious and I know this is maybe a conversation for next time, but we talked a lot about like the resident side of things. I'm curious from the property owner side of things, what kind of patterns we're seeing in terms of, we're talking about this idea of potential problem properties, right? What are the patterns we're seeing in the places that are hosting these gatherings? Are we talking places that are just packed full of bedrooms? Are we talking about places that are falling apart at the seams? Are there no patterns?
I couldn't say that there's anything I could point to specifically.
Yeah.
And you're also missing the fact that the fine, more than half got a warning before the fine, and that warning isn't in here because they ended up fined, correct? Cause I know on at least two of them, the officer showed up and said, I'll be back, cleaned it up, and they came back and they had with another complaint, so they took care of it right then and there.
So, yeah, with a.
With some of them, so you gotta remember, there's a few extra warnings.
Which is, like, as there should be, like.
But I don't think that's not-
that we're not trying to make.
I can tell you very confidently that there's not like a consistent nexus that I could point to that says this property is drawing more attention than this property.
Yeah.
Right? I think that there have been a couple apartments that we've been to that I've had to deal with a specific, I might have had more conversations with a specific landlord than others, but it's just because of the density of apartments that they have, the sheer density versus, you know, a single house. That makes sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so.
I'd also over time like to know, because different landlords own multiple buildings, you know, if there is a management company or a landlord that crops up more often as we go.
Yeah,
forward.
we have that data, we just didn't share it, we've been dealing with that.
As long as we're talking about wishes, I'd love to know if they're University of Maine students versus Hudson or EMCC. I know that's not, and we have a fair amount of Hudson students that are living here.
Hey, one or two,
Big complex.
one for sure was Newton students.
Yeah,
I know that
That's
for a
another
fact.
question, you know, like.
One was a group of.
don't want them to get an unnecessary bad rap.
No, it's not all UMaine students,
No.
and it's, on a couple occasions, there were Hudson kids involved. In fact, I think one of the bad ones was
Recently.
UMaine students that non-students showed up and didn't know how to conduct themselves.
Right.
And so we ended up having to deal with that.
I do think what's nice about this data so far is that it actually, I think, paints a pretty positive picture.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I know it's residences, but, or residents in general, but that like. Student perspective, but I think
But it's also only March 9th, so let's not talk too soon.
I get excited to see everybody out on the lawn having.
I also get excited and nervous.
Have fun, and then at 10 o'clock, and I'll get started.
We get a couple championship teams here in the spring, you never know what happens.
So, events and information sharing, we'll continue to press the information out, think more about collectively among staff, and I don't know, Lori, if there are things that can be done, you have more things that we can do.
We can send out messaging, like Catherine said, we have the ability to send messages to students. You know, we can absolutely do that.
Okay.
We can do it now, we can do it before the school year starts in the fall. I mean, we could do all sorts of things, so.
I think it would be good to do something as the weather gets warmer for the spring, and then, you know, as the fall too, I think would be helpful.
Just help us with the messaging.
Okay.
I also think even just like having a flyer, like posted in Nest told to be an OHOP, just like on the wall, that way students at least are like familiar with the language of like, oh, there's an ordinance.
Yeah.
Just like something as simple as that.
Yeah, we can do that. We'll talk with the community engagement team about.
The
that.
QR code does a lot, and that landing page is pretty good, so.
Yeah.
we'll tweak it that way.
And did we do anything with landlords and lease language? We had conversations about that? I don't know if there's any.
Last recommendation we had from our attorney is not recommend landlords what they should have for language. If they
Okay.
ever ask us, we share some that others have given us. We don't ever recommend.
Are we sending a letter to landlords?
So, yeah, we usually do that, and I think that would be good that we get it in the letter that we send out, so people when they read it, because I know that's happening,
Thank you.
can add that. So, yeah.
Fraternity's okay? You guys have a lot of.
They're great.
All right. So those are good spots to have. Yeah. All right. Anybody have anything else before? I know we're a little over and we should have booked an hour and a half. I apologize. Glad you just.
Thank you, it's been a good process, I especially appreciate these, good judgment response. I mean, I've certainly lived in Orono long enough to come to respect that, but this is just another case, and I appreciate very much the police force in this town.
Yeah, no, it's. Yeah, all right, so next meeting for us will be after the end of the, probably June. That'll be the last kind of scheduled meeting that we have with the group. And if we need to meet more after that, we'll ask council, you know, we'll talk about that together about what we want to ask council this morning. What you'll see out of this is gonna be, I'll coordinate, assuming everyone's okay, I'll coordinate with Clint. I'll put together an ordinance change. We'll hold a public hearing, we'll call a public hearing on it. I'll keep everybody, you know, linked in on how that's gonna go. And we'll share the language with you if you've got, I mean, you'd be welcome to, but we're gonna report it as kind of a consensus suggestions from the committee. Anybody have a problem? And I'm gonna check with Joseph and make sure that if anyone wants to take a minority view, on any of this, they'll have ample opportunity to speak, but I would really like to be able to do this before the end of April on the council schedule. So we're gonna update the council tonight in chair report. Then we'll start holding call a public hearing, have a public hearing, and ask council to consider these changes. We've got at least one vote.
We'll see.
Favor, yeah. And again, you know, do what you're gonna do. Yeah.